So you've written the big chunks of your speech. You've come up with your main points, you've come up with your introduction, all those types of things. Now let's talk transitions. Transitions are the ways that you move from one point on to the next point, and how you make those points seem connected. Transitions are really important, and having good transitions is what differentiates novice beginning speakers from people who actually know what they're doing. Now, that's not to be rude, that's just to help you understand the importance of transitions. Now, transitions, again, they tie the speech together. They are what moves the speech from point to point. Now, typically a good transition is going to restate a previous point and forecast what's going to happen in your next point. Now that we've done this, and we understand how this works, we can move on to looking at this. So, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to help us understand how we're getting from point A to point B. And the more specific you can be in those transitions, the better it's going to connect your big chunks of information together. So think about it like giving directions. When you give directions, you could say, well, you take a left after a little while, and then you take a right after a little while, and then you'll see a big fat guy wearing a poncho, and then you've arrived. Yeah, there's some direction in there, and we can probably find our way, but it's going to be more direct if you can give us more clear, specific examples in those transitions. So now that we've finished talking about the comedic genius of whatever comedy genius we're talking about, and we've established why this has happened, so you're using these same words that you were using before, now we can talk about this thing and how it influenced this specific thing. So what might a transition statement sound like? I did a quick Google search and found this list of 25 transitional phrases that'll make your next speech look like butter by Shane Purnell. And I just thought I would give you some visual ideas of some things that you might choose to use as your transitionary statements. Some of these statements are not as strong as others. For instance, the next point I'd like to make is a super clunky transition. That's like saying, so this is the end of my story about breakfast, and then I couldn't believe it, but the kid threw up all the food we'd just eaten. The next story I'd like to say is, see, that's just a clunky transition. It's not normal, it's not natural. It gets your point across, so if you're super nervous, the next point I'd like to make would be a fine transition, but maybe not the strongest transition you could use. Moving right along is kind of a dismissive transition. It sounds like the things you were talking about aren't really connected to the next things. So think about that. Again, in conclusion, another type of clunky transition. My first point is a clunky transition. Don't use these transitions unless you're really trying to tell us that you're a beginner of public speaking. The next thing that we can see there, it gets a little bit better as we go down this list of transitions. As you can see from these examples, is a fantastic transition. What it does is it tells us that you are going to be connecting these examples to another piece of information. Now that we understand is another way that we can connect the previous information we were talking about to the next information that we're talking about. You can connect, now that we understand whatever, we can say, let's consider. That can be a combination transition to kind of review what you just talked about and preview what you're going to talk about next. And transitions are really all about building that type of connection for people.